Thank you, Janet. Next, we're going to have a third grade teacher discussing a third grade reading guarantee. Jackie Conrad.
Well, I hear more bad news, I guess. I need to borrow James. James, you want to get me going here because I sure can't see what that says. You want to start it for me? How about it and just be my assistant? My name's Jackie Conrad and I teach third grade.
Slideshow.
Yeah, slideshow.
Slideshow.
There.
No.
Gosh, I didn't know I was going to be the only one. It's over in the middle there.
There you go. From the beginning over there.
All right. So you want to click get a rhythm going here. And I teach third grade. And the third grade guarantee actually impacts kindergarten through third grade. But third grade is where the high stakes, where the consequences really kick in. It's kind of the law goes like this. Diagnostic tests in grades K through 3 at the beginning of the year, and students who are not on track get to be on a RIMP, which stands for a Reading Improvement Monitoring Plan. And I'm glad I'm in Ohio because Florida has the same guarantee, but their little acronym is PMP. And so, you know, we have these parent meetings and things, and, you know, I need to talk to you about your RIMP, so I'm happy that I'm in Ohio. Click for me. Okay, then the big, you know, the high stakes tests come, and I'm kind of fortunate that I'm teaching third grade because this year we got a stay of execution from the park test. We're giving the OAA test again at the end of the year. The original plan was we would give the fall OAA, and then those kids who passed would take the park test in the spring, while the kids who did not pass would take the OAA again. Well, that would have been a nightmare. So we talked about No Child Left Behind was signed into law. In 2003 is the history of the third grade OAA test. And back then, under No Child Left Behind, it was more of a you know, pitting district against district, and we didn't have letter grades on our report card, but you were rated according to this test and other high stakes tests by how your district did. So the OAA test has score bands which are basic, limited, proficient, accelerated, and advanced. And the cutoff score has always been 400 for proficient. The past 3 years, we started with the third grade guarantee, which the outcome can be retention if they don't reach the score. But they did cut us a little bit of slack by saying the first year the cutoff score was 390, then it moved to 392. This year it's 394, and it was supposed to go so on and so forth up to 400. I have a lot of concerns about what's happening next year because I haven't heard any direction from anywhere. If you would click for me, please. Thank you. Okay, so any child who receives a 394 in the fall or spring will be promoted. So let's say that they get, you know, a 394 in the fall, and then they take the test again in the spring and they get a 386. They're still promoted based on that fall score. So the state recognizes the highest of the two scores.
Why do they have to take them low if they pass?
Pardon?
Why do they have to take them again if they pass the first time?
Because part of that shows the district's growth. So if they were at a 394, they were in limited. But by the end of the year, you would hope that they would get to proficient. And then the building gets points, and it's all calculated out into that A, B, C, D, F grade card for that building, which factors in with the district. Okay. Okay. If they don't pass their OAA, the law says that there are state-approved vendor assessments. And if the district purchases them, because they're an additional cost, there are 3 that are approved by our state to promote students. So the NWEA MAP, they need to get a not a 384, it's actually a 184 or higher, or the Iowa assessment, 170 or higher, or the Terra Nova, they need a 596 or higher. So those are two ways that during the school year, third graders can attain promotion to grade 4. Okay. If they're not promoted, they could have a summer school thing, and you know, the districts try to make it kind of a fun thing, like they call it reading safari or something, and then in July they give a shortened form of the OAA. If they don't pass that one, they must be taught reading at third grade level by a highly qualified teacher, and there are all kinds of new kinds of qualifications that teachers have to go through just to teach reading. If they're ready for fourth grade work in another subject area. So for example, let's say they get a 400 on their math, but they got a 391 or a 393 on their OAA in the summer, then that child has to take third grade reading, but they can take fourth grade math. Okay, now we're talking elementary school here. And here's the zinger. I saved the best one for last. If they pass the October OAA as a repeating third grader, then they can be promoted to fourth grade. Unfortunately, we give the fall OAA in October, and we pack them all up and send them down to the state, and they score them and give us a score report 2 months later, usually right around Christmas time. So you could have, theoretically, you could have a child that sat in third grade for half a year, did well on their OAA test, and now, mid-fourth grade, here they come. Okay, now what's going to happen in the future for this kid? You know, we need to think about the kids here. Thank you. Okay, where did this come from? So as a third grade teacher, you know, I kind of just said, oh, you know, this is terrible, but it hasn't really affected that many kids, but then last year it was affecting more, and this year, you know, I'm frightened. I'm just frightened because I'm doing everything I know how to do. I've had plenty of reading coursework. I've had plenty of reading training. We were a reading first district, so I know what it is, but the one thing that it's going to take is time, and I only have time until May. So I said, where did this come from? Back up. Oh, never mind. Okay, I'll tell you what's on that one.
You got it. Back up.
You are awesome. You're hired. Okay. The state of Florida had a program called Just Read Florida. And it was when Jeb Bush was the governor there. And they said, you know, we're going to do this thing. We're going to really crack down. But the state also invested like billions of dollars, and they came up with a class size limit. So I think kindergarten through third grade, you could have 18 kids, not one more. They didn't do that in Ohio. Right. But anyway, the ODE website itself says at the bottom, you know, it says it's from Just Read, you know, Florida. This worked really well in Florida. So what happened in Florida is they still had kids that were retained. Now, you want to guess which ones? They were spring birthdays, they were boys, they were minorities. They were poor. So all of this, you know, turned out to be just what we would think it would be. And anyway, Florida said, gosh, you won't believe it, but our NAEP scores just raised through the roof. Now, do you want to think why that could be? They take the NAEP test in fourth grade. So the year that they held back all these kids, they didn't send them on to fourth grade. Those kids never took the test. So then they kind of had this trend where, you know, they were inching upward, but then some of the researchers, and I have a stack full of research, and my links are all on a sheet printed out with like little blue hyperlinks, because I'm going to ask you to help me. but they're over there available on that table. And they said, well, wait a minute. Let's look at what happens on the other end of this. And since Florida started it way before Ohio did, you know, they can now go and look, and they're counting the number of kids. So if you took third grade twice, you would be 19 by the time you graduated.
Right.
Well, those kids are missing. So what happened to those kids is they ended up dropping out. There's study after study after study that shows that you have like a 67% correlation if you are retained in a grade. You have 67% chance to drop out. Because you just get old, and it's a stigma, and everybody knows about it. I had a little girl last year who had some health problems, and she repeated kindergarten, and when she brought her birthday treat in to pass out, you know, we sang happy birthday, and when we said, how old are you? She said, I'm 10. And the kids were like, huh? So she explained to them, she said, you know, I was in a hospital, I had surgery, and I didn't go to school very much in kindergarten, so I took it twice. But for the rest of the year, those kids remembered. And they didn't make fun of her or pick on her or anything, but they said, oh yeah, you know, that's so-and-so. She repeated, and she got held back. So it does. It goes with them for the rest of their lives. You want to skip ahead? Okay. All right. Yeah. This is what I already said. Skip another one. I got on a roll there. I started flipping my glasses. Okay, so let's talk about accountability now. What's the whole purpose behind all these tests? It's accountability, right? And I believe in accountability. Back in the fall, just when school started, did anybody catch that story about that lady in Oklahoma? She went to school, it was her first day on the job, she just got hired, she went to school drunk with no pants. Do you remember that one? Those things stick with me. Okay, I don't think that woman doesn't belong in the classroom. It's really, really overt. And you know what? A lot of people that are teachers, we have these nightmares sometimes that happens, don't we? Woo! Okay. Accountability. You know, and we expect it. But we're adults, and we understand that nobody's perfect. People make mistakes. And you know what? I don't care what profession you're in, there's some duds. There's probably some duds in teaching. There's probably some duds in policemen. There's dud doctors. They get sued. There's dud lawyers. And, you know, internally, can we take a system and find those people without having to subject every single child to hour after hour after hour of tests for months after months? That's what I don't understand. I'm a teacher. I'm not the smartest person in the world, but I trust and hope that people would figure out a different way. You know, and another thing too is, let's talk about doctors. Okay? What if the state came up with a system for doctors? What if they said, you know, let's just count how many of your patients die, because the whole point behind being a doctor is to help people stay alive. So what if the state said, gosh, you're an oncologist, 10 of your patients died, you're fired, you're a dermatologist, none of your patients died, you're the best, A for you, F for you. What's going to happen to all of us? Nobody's going to want to be a cardiologist or an oncologist. You're going to have lots of dermatologists, and we'll have nice complexions, but when we need somebody to take care of our insides, we're going to be out of luck. That's exactly what's happening in this country. And in a few years, unless we stop this, that's what's going to happen. Lack of transparency. I give my tests. I give the kids the OAA test. I have to sign a paper. I won't look at the questions. You know, they need tissues, or they need another mint, or their pencil breaks. I have to go over to them, and honestly, I try to force my eyes to stare at the page number that they're on, because I'm not supposed to look at the questions. They're secure test materials. I can lose my license If I look at a question or a passage, kids are like, what's this word? And they always have some weird name of a character in the stories, and I can't tell them. So, you know, but here's what I do. I take the test, give them to the principal, she boxes them up, they go off, they get scored. Those scores come back from the end of the year, they come back in the summertime. They probably are doing a rush job now because they need to know who's got to get retained. But I don't get to see the test again. My kids never get to see the test again. But this is all going to help me be a better teacher, because next year when I have different kids, I get handed my score of how last year's kids did. So, you know, where is that? And then I looked into, like the zinger of all of them, I looked into how many of these tests could possibly have scoring errors, or how many times could there be questions that might have 2 correct answers. I found a report that has like 57 cases of this, where in other states kids were held back from graduating because what happened was maybe their parents were attorneys or they knew some, and they had to file a Freedom of Information Act, and they did get the actual tests back, and they did look, and there were errors on the tests. Some of the tests sometimes have 2 right answers. We are taking the children's lives, putting them in a box, sending them off, and on blind faith saying, yep, you know, I'm sorry, you have to stay in 3rd grade because you had a 393. And meanwhile, on that test, there might be an answer that, or a question that had 2 correct answers. Okay, we're not allowed to see the tests anymore. Since 2011, the law changed, and so they weren't released. None of them were released. And the park test, in order to give the park test, it's even got more security. You have to, it's like signing a mortgage to buy a house. All the rules for test security. And they're taking the tests on the computers. And the computers might break, and there's just all of these horror stories going on. So yes, I got a stay of execution for this year. You want to move on? Okay, and I think that we've already talked about New York's failure rate, 70%. So what I'm thinking is, as a 3rd grade teacher, I'm with you. I have to get out. I cannot tell 70% of my kids that they can't go to 4th grade if I have to give them that park test next year. I won't do it. I can't.
So what are we going to do with the 70% that stay with the 2nd graders that are coming in?
Well, I'm sure there's going to be Teach for America people that come in to those classrooms. I know that. Go ahead and click ahead. All right, so this is what I need. Help. Demand 2-way accountability. I give the test, I get to see the test after you scored it. And so should the families, and so should the children that worked on the test. Our state spends millions of dollars of our tax dollars on tests that we don't ever get to see again, and we just have to take their word for it. Remind people that you contact that you are a voter and a taxpayer. There are some in here now, many, many more, and they all have emails, and they all have websites, and they all have Facebook. Support us. Know your rights. Become an advocate. Parents have rights. The child is not a creature that belongs to the state. It's in the law. And I think I'll finish with some quotes from some of our friends. Bill Gates on September 21st, 2013. It would be great if our education stuff worked, but that we won't know for probably a decade. So we're doing experiments on guinea pigs. Oh, by the way, Bill Gates, his kids don't have to take the park test. His kids don't have to do Common Core. They go to his private school in Seattle. Next. David Coleman, chief architect of the Common Core. And you can find this one right on YouTube. As you grow up in this world, you realize people really don't give up about what you feel or what you think. He said it at a meeting. He went to Yale,